This time, working on another Christmas item, Mr. Christmas. Not a clue. It just is Mr. Christmas. I don't know what you'd call this, like a double Ferris wheel. You can hear it's on, but nothing's working. You got the two lights in the front that are on, and the music. We got no rotation, which I'm assuming this is supposed to do something. Spins freely. The volume knob's a little staticky. Here's something else. It's in the off position. That's on. That's off. And the song rotate works. This is a 6-volt unit. I did not have the correct power supply. It didn't come with it. But you can see I have 6 volts going into it. Here's the leads to make it work. So, it's similar to the Ferris wheel. It's got a drive shaft, so there's probably a broken belt in here. Most likely. And you can kind of hear it. It sounds like there's something moving inside. So we're going to open it up. It also has a rattle. Could just be dirt, debris. Again, outdoor display like the previous ones. We're going to find out why the off-on switch doesn't do anything. Not that it matters, it's usually always on and hooked up to a timer power switch. We're going to see if we can clean up the knob so it's not so staticky. That's pretty bad. He does play the music on these. And hopefully the end result is we can make it sound good and make it spin again. So stay tuned. Okay, got the bottom off, as you can see. Similar to the Ferris wheel. Looks like this pod will come out. It might have a broken drive belt, I don't know, but the rattling sound is a gear. Apparently something let go, because there's a gear. They got a, looks like a solder ball. And if you look on the front of the gear, there's some plastic pins. So, might have broke a belt, but it looks like we also might have broke some more important things inside. This one has 4 screws holding in the transmission mechanism, while the Ferris wheel only had 3. But they're still on the outside edge, on 3 corners. And from visual inspection, I can see corrosion on the power switch. And of course, there's corrosion here. Wouldn't expect any different from it being outside. But we're going to unscrew those too, so we can pull the transmission out without going across that bunch of wires. Or the gearbox, whatever you want to refer to it as. The bottom of the plate has 6 screws. There was only 4 in it. 1 screw is rotted off inside, and the other screw is missing. If I have a replacement screw, I'll at least replace the one that's missing. The one that's rotted off inside, it's not really worth the trouble. It's just going to rot again. But there's enough to hold the base on. So I'm going to remove these 2 circuit boards. And I'll have to break the hot glue to get the wires. So, oh. Screw missing there. Okay. Alright, the AC adapter, the off-on switch, the select for music switch, and the volume knob are all lifted out of the way. I left the circuit board in for the song selector, but that gives me enough room to slide this out and see what's going on. So take the screws out so we don't lose them. The belt's intact. That's amazing for something that sits outside. So my assumption of a broken belt was wrong. And this gear is the drive gear that turns the big metal drive shaft right here. So the boss is right there. It's kind of a triangular shape with 3 screws. I can see that the pin that holds the gear has dropped. It's usually flush, like the Ferris wheel. This one's not flush, it's protruding downwards. So we're going to unscrew the 3 screws. Since I got some fat fingers, we're going to use a little help. Or not. It's 1 screw. 2 screws. 3 screws. And this plastic plate does not want to come off. It looks like it's pressed on the drive shaft. Yeah, it's pretty well pressed on. Alright. Let's rotate. Alright. There's a plastic bushing pressed into the plastic plate. There we go. Now, of course, we're trying to do this without breaking anything. No idea how this fell off. There's a couple of cracks on it. Let's see if it'll focus. If you look at the very tip, you'll see there's 4 hairline fractures on the top. They don't go all the way through, which is good. The reason it protrudes down like it does is this was pressed onto the bottom of the shaft. So let's pop that bushing back in. Which is going to take 2 sets of pliers. There we go. I'm sure you heard the click. That was me pushing the bushing on that I thought this was housed on the other side of, and I was wrong. I'm going to screw that triangular plate back on. One thing I do seem to notice, and I'm starting to like about Mr. Christmas, over such things as like Limax is they kind of use a modular or pod setup. Instead of disassembling the entire drive system to get to the belt or replace a motor, it comes out as a pod, and then you can unscrew the motor or replace the belt with no more disassembly. If you have to replace a gear, of course, then you have to open up the pod or the transmission, but it seems to be pretty nice, pretty modular. So what I'm probably going to have to do with this is I'm going to go clean it with alcohol. I'm going to fill the cracks with glue. And then I'm going to slide it back onto the drive shaft. And I'm probably going to end up gluing it onto the drive shaft at the same time. That way it actually mates and stays. I just got to figure out which way the gear went. I'm assuming the gear went the protruded side, probably went up. So I'm going to slide it on in that direction. I'm going to set the transmission in there and see if it engages the teeth. So sit on the standoffs, and yep. So it might be hard to see, especially with my fingers in the way, but right down in there, down towards the front, you can kind of see the teeth. That's the gear. So what happened was the tip of the gear, which is slightly smaller for pressing it on, this part, with all the hairline fractures from probably again being outside and use. These things run way more than most people will run them. These things run about 8 hours a day, almost every night for 6 to 8 weeks. So this part fractured because this hole on this end is slightly smaller than the hole on that end, generally for being pressed on. So I'm going to clean this with alcohol. I'm going to try and notch the cracks. And what I mean by notch is take a razor knife and make it from a flat crack to a V. I'll try to demonstrate on something. Cardboard box. So the crack looks like that. So this would be looking at it this way. What I want to do is I'm going to take the crack and make it a V, all three of them. By doing that, it allows me to put the glue inside there to give it more surface area to bond. Hopefully that's visible, bright and small. So instead of just being a hairline crack and then covering it in glue, if I take a X-Acto knife or a razor knife, something with a fine tip, and shave the plastic slowly into a V notch, and then I can fill it with glue, you get the bigger surface area for a better bond. So this has apparently just 3 cracks. I thought it was 4. Nope, just 3. So I'm going to V all 3 cracks carefully. Then I'm going to re-clean the gear. I just use 91% rubbing alcohol, and then I'm going to fill it with Gorilla Glue, let it harden for 10-15 minutes so it's no longer tacky. Then I'm going to put glue on the shaft. After I clean the shaft with alcohol, you need a clean mating surface. I'm going to push it on, let it harden again for another 10-15 minutes, and then we'll be back to see if the belt won't slip because there's no load on it right now, and make the, I guess it's a double Ferris wheel, rotate again. We know that, and then if that works, I'm going to use some alcohol and a brush, and we're going to clean up the switch and the circuit board here, see if we can get the volume knob to not crackle and make all sorts of obnoxious sounds, and then make the off-on switch, actually turn things off and on. So, shall return once we get this taken care of, and see if it works. Alright, we've glued the gear, clamped it, let it sit for a while. The motor now turns the drive shaft. I took the top off. I would keep beating it up, trying to move it around. Also, I want to inspect the ring and worm gear at the top to make sure there was no broken teeth or any debris inside the housing, which there's not. In the process of turning stuff around, the switch came off, which is good because it's going to be easier to clean, and then I can just re-solder it back on. I have a stiff bristle toothbrush, and I have rubbing alcohol and a spritzer. How you do this is I'm going to put a little bit on here, and I'm going to work in around the edges of the switch. Problem with alcohol is it can expedite rust. It removes any contaminants that might be sealing it. I've had it in the past cause some components to rust, but most of the stuff in here is just solder. And the casing, I believe, is a coated tin or zinc. So I'm going to let that dry. Apparently I got a call coming in. So, be just a moment. Alright, sorry for that interruption. So, as you were seeing, I was scrubbing into the switch with the alcohol, trying to get around the edges and the base, and then I would flick it back and forth. It's a lot smoother. I'm hoping it'll actually work correctly now. We got the corrosion off the contacts. Spritz some alcohol on here, and then I was scrubbing on the edge of the wheel. Right there. On all the sides, trying to get to the contacts. Most of the contacts are on the back side, or the side with the 3 pins, but I went all the way around to help clean out any gunk, dirt, and don't know if it works right yet, but the wheel is a lot smoother. It doesn't feel like sand or grit is in it anymore. So I'm hoping that that has cleaned it enough to where it works right. So what I'm going to do now is re-solder the switch. Their solder joints are horrible. You can see how big and gloppy that is. That's where the incoming power wire, and then, which is this green one here, then this red wire was soldered over here, which isn't so bad, but these are some pretty horrid solder joints. So I'm going to remove the solder glob and re-solder it. And then screw this stuff back in like it's supposed to be. Give it a test to make sure that it all works. And then put the double coaster back on. Or not coaster, Ferris wheel. And since I have it off, this company is really good. Look at how many screws they use to hold this thing together. There's a ton of them. And this has a huge amount of weight to it. This isn't light. Mr. Christmas, if you're a Christmas miniature person, collector, etc., these are really nice. They have a lot of weight. They don't feel cheap and plastic. The wheels are actually metal. Just like that Ferris wheel was. The outers are metal, the pins are metal, the cars are plastic. The arm is plastic, but they have a really nice smooth shaft. They actually use a really good bushing on both ends on their axles. So if you're a Christmas collector, I doubt they have anything Halloween related since it's Mr. Christmas, they might be really good additions to your miniature village. And they're a lot easier to service than other companies like Department 56, Lee Max, or Hawthorne Village. I like the way that everything is modular and easily accessible. And for these things being out in the elements 2 months of the year, they're holding up immaculately well. So, anyway, I'll be back in just a few. I'm going to solder all this. I'm sure you don't want to see me solder. You've seen me do it on other videos. Solder and screw all the pieces back in. Then we'll give the test. Hopefully, everything works. Alright. It's all screwed back in and soldered. And switch now works. No, until I just unplugged it, but it works. Apparently that was too much stress. I broke the wire. Alright, so gonna reassemble this hub. This is relatively simple. The big black gear goes in the back. This has got a flat spot, so it's keyed. Stick it through. And stick the back on it. Get the axle screw in to start straightening it out. off-on switch works. You can see it spins. Just unplugged it by tipping it. The problem with the off-on switch was it was just corroded. You can see it works just fine. The broken gear, we're able to repair it by V-notching the cracks, backfilling them with Gorilla Glue, sliding it back on the shaft, re-Gorilla Gluing it, and then letting it sit. Let it sit till the glue is hard. A lot of Gorilla Glue takes time. It gets tacky, but it's not hard. Unfortunately, the volume knob doesn't work anymore since it's been cleaned. I'm going to open the bottom back up and check it. It's very possible one of the wires got broke off since there are 3 wires soldered to it. I didn't notice it, but that doesn't mean that it didn't get broken when I screwed the bottom on. And if it is, I'll fix it. If not, I'll see if I have another wheel I can put in here, another volume knob or potentiometer. The person that owns this has outdoor Christmas music. He's not too concerned with the volume as much as he was with the actual motion. So it's not a high priority, but still want to try and get it back to somewhat original setup from Mr. Christmas. So she works like she's supposed to, and it'll be on display this Christmas season here in Arizona. So hopefully this helps you with your similar item, whether it's this exact one from Mr. Christmas or if you have something similar from Liamax or Department 56 on how possibly to disassemble it, find the cause, and figure out a way to repair the problem. Normally I'd replace that gear, but when I went through my gears, when I was letting it harden with glue, I either had the right teeth with the wrong shaft size or the right shaft size with the wrong teeth. So that's why I decided just to repair the one that's in here. So apparently my power cord is a little loose. So anyhow, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below in the comment field. Hopefully this helps you. Stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for watching.